The Institute of Internal Auditors presents All Things Internal Audit. In this episode, Liz Sandwith talks with Lauressa Nelson about the changes in the IIA's new Global Internal Audit Standards. They discuss how internal auditors can prepare for these changes, the challenges they may face, and practical strategies to ensure conformance by January 9th, 2025.
Hi, Liz. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm really looking forward to sharing some thoughts.
So, we are coming closer and closer to the official effective date for the new Global Internal Audit Standards. So, how are you sensing that people are preparing? How are they feeling about it? Are internal auditors feeling that they're ready?
I think it would be fair to say probably no. So I'm saying generically no. I think some sectors, financial services sector, probably, got it well and truly sorted because they will have a professional practices team that will support the internal audit function in conforming with the standards. Some of the public sector, no. And some smaller private sector, and certainly some of the charities are not there yet. I did a webinar today, I did one last week, and in both, more than 33% haven't even read them yet.
Really?
So I think there are challenges in terms of, I sort of think, and I don't think it was confused in any way, shape, or form, but I'm sensing that people think, right, from 9th of January 2025, I now need to start doing something about conforming. They haven't seen 2024 as a transition year in terms of taking time to read them, do a gap analysis, understand where they're weak, where they're strong, what they need to do. I think they've just thought, oh, right, and they'll start in January next year.
Right.
I think the challenge is going to be, if they've recently had an external quality assessment, maybe 2023 or indeed this year, I think in their heads, they're probably thinking, we're good for the next 3 or 4 years. So we can embed the standards in our own time. Whereas if they've got an EQA due this year, they're beginning to panic a little.
Right.
And what I've been saying to people I talk to, because you've given them options, either make sure you do it this year and do it in accordance with the IPPF 2017, or delay it and do it in 2025, but maybe do it later in the year rather than at the beginning of the year. And I think a number of people, what they've done is they've brought forward their external quality assessment to 2024, but they've also asked who's ever doing the external quality assessment to do a validated self-assessment of a gap analysis that they've done in relation to, how far are we from conforming with the new Global Internal Audit Standards. I did one of those for a customer quite recently, a large organization, and they had an EQA this year, and I did the gap analysis. And they have a lot of work to do.
Wow. Okay. Well, that is very interesting. How does this gap analysis idea work? So, for people that are saying, boy, I wasn't thinking about this, but January 9th, 2025 is almost here. What would you recommend for them to get started right now doing?
I think what I would suggest is think about when you last had your EQA or your external quality assessment. Where were you strong? Where were you weak? So I would almost link it to a SWOT analysis. What are the strengths of the internal audit function? What are its weaknesses? Are there opportunities to use the global internal audit standards to raise their bar? And are there some threats? Maybe you have an audit committee or a board that's not very supportive of the internal audit function. So I'd do my SWOT analysis first and I'd document that. And then I'd look at my last EQA, even if it was back in 2022, what were the findings? What were the outcomes of that external quality assessment? Then I'd use that as my base. Then I would look at the two-way mapping document that the IIA has produced to see, the ones where I did okay, what are we now saying the Global Internal Audit Standards say? And where there are new standards, I would flag those as things I need to work on because I haven't got conformance.
Sure.
And then I'd also, sorry.
I was just going to say, sure. So the 2017 standards would be your last EQA would have been performed against those. And then now you're looking at not just what did I do well on and what didn't I do well on, but also now I'm looking at 2024, what's new and different between then and now, right?
I think the other really useful document, and I think, the IIA has done a brilliant job, is the Conformance Readiness Assessment, because that's picked up the new standards. So like standard 1.1, honesty and professional courage, standard 4.3, professional skepticism, because they're very new. And therefore it's shown you what sort of evidence of conformance you need for those. Because some of these more behavioral ones are, I think, causing some challenges for internal audit functions, CAEs, in terms of how do I demonstrate honesty and professional courage? That's quite difficult to be able to demonstrate.
Sure, there's not necessarily tangible evidence as there is with most other standards where you have documentation to support it.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of have some tangential evidence. Like what would be some examples of things you would use? We've always had this struggle with the code of ethics and now in this case, it's the standards and principles of ethics and professionalism. But what are some ways that people can demonstrate conformance in those areas?
I think with those ones now, I think the objectivity element is fairly straightforward, not vastly different from what we've done in the past. But I think that, the honesty and professional courage, I think I would use customer feedback. So I've done an EQA, I've done an internal audit engagement. And now, customer, how did you think the internal auditors performed? Were they honest with you when when they were highlighting things that you hadn't done particularly well? Did they demonstrate that they had the courage to call out to you things that you weren't doing particularly well? So I think it's about redoing your customer feedback and bringing these things to the fore in terms of, how do you as a customer feel the internal auditors demonstrated those elements of our ethics and professionalism Domain 2 standards?
Sure. And those are particularly related to the behavior of individual internal auditors. What about the purpose domain? It doesn't have standards and principles, but why is that important? And how does that relate to the rest of the standards?
I think that is probably the most important domain here. That speaks to who I am as an internal auditor. It talks about what I can deliver to you, my organization, in my capacity as a professional, competent internal auditor. I love the two words at the end of the professional statement, purpose statement, around insight and foresight. It's very easy for us to do engagements and say, thank you very much, there are the findings. This is more telling what's happening now. What are we seeing now in the organization? And looking across the organization. So I might be doing an audit on, customer services. But also what's happening is my organization going through lots of change. And therefore, how do, what I do as part of my internal audit engagement, how is it meeting my purpose statement, but also how is it adding value and enhancing the organization's ability to achieve its objectives. I think the foresight bit is absolutely key as well. And we've talked about this over the years, but it's never been anywhere before. Now it's saying, okay, internal audit, although you're not the only person in the organization who can apply some foresight, internal audit, where do you think the next crisis might be? What are the key risks in our organization that are being exacerbated by the volatility of the environment we find ourselves in and the challenges that that presents? So, Wall Street, according to the business news this morning, lowest levels since 2015, yesterday when it closed. And therefore, what does that mean to your organization in terms of challenges? And how do we demonstrate as internal auditors that we are looking beyond the walls of our organization and seeing what's coming down the track? And how can we share that with the business and support the business in dealing with these new crises, complex risks, etc.
So it sounds like the purpose and domain one have sort of elevated the expectation, or put into words at least, all the expectations that internal auditors aspire to deliver on. And how have the other domains, I specifically am thinking about domain 3 and governing the internal audit function, also brought in that idea of raising the expectations, raising the bar for the function? What's new? And I know domain 3 is governing the internal audit function, which sounds a little bit like basically new terminology and concepts, but how does that relate also to delivering on the purpose?
It's about the relationship. So, internal audit has a relationship with the audit committee. And I have spoken to chief audit execs, and some of them go, domain 3 is a walk in the park. We do it already. We have conversations, we take reports, they sign our charter, they look at our plan, all of that sort of thing. Okay. And then I say, what do they say when you present these documents? Often, what are the conversations? And, a bit like I have done over 25 years of reporting to audit committees, sometimes you get the, thank you, Liz, that was most interesting. And they haven't got a clue what you've just been talking about, but they're ticking a box. And I was saying to them, and that people have nodded and said, yep, absolutely, get that. And I've said, yeah, but that's not enough now. What we need to see is this two-way street. What we need to see is the audit committee saying, well, Liz, why is reputational risk not on your radar? Why are you not including customer services in your internal audit plan? Do you have the capacity and capability, the skills and the resources to deliver this plan? We need to see those sorts of conversations. And I was stunned to realize quite recently that a number of CAEs only attend the audit committee for the internal audit bit. They don't attend for the full committee. Well, no, we should be there for the whole of the audit committee meeting. And they never see the minutes. Well, no, moving forward, if we're going to want to use the minutes to evidence our relationship, then we absolutely need to have sight of those. So a line in the minutes that says internal audit presented a report, no, that's not evidence of this governing responsibility, this overarching obligation on the audit committee or your exec board, whoever you report into, the governing body, to show that they are meeting the requirements of domain 3. And my crystal ball, and it's not always right, but my crystal ball is sensing that when we start seeing EQAs happen, maybe mid-25 onwards, I think domain 3 will be the one that presents the failure to evidence conformance in the reports. Because I think there is a risk that people will go, yeah, I know, that's what I do already. And it's way more than you do already. in terms of that relationship. And don't forget, domain 3's got the essential conditions in. So we also need to be able to demonstrate that we've had conversations with senior management as well. And how are we evidencing that? So I think domain 3 is going to need a bit of thinking. But again, the IIA have produced a toolkit that helps with this, helps with the conversation. And the webinar I did today, more than 40% of the people on the webinar haven't even started the conversations with their exec board or audit committee. When you only have 4 meetings a year, we've got perhaps one left. It's really challenging.
Yeah, it really sounds like those conversations need to come first, even to inform the board of the changes in the standards and what new things the function's going to be doing, as well as these essential conditions, what the function needs to have in place to be able to essentially deliver the purpose of internal auditing. It seems like that conversation, that foundational conversation that is in the introduction of domain 3 is so key to everything else really working well.
Yeah, I think that's really right. I think the other thing, you talked a moment ago about domain 1, the purpose. There's no standards, there's no evidence of conformance. It's really quite challenging. But what I have said is one of the things that as internal audit, we talk a lot about is, promoting ourselves across the organization. And I've said, I've suggested to people, and I know a number have already done this and said, wow, does it work? Is, amend your email signature on all of your emails to include the purpose statement, not the other bits, but the purpose statement. And then you're constantly reminding yourself, but also you're reminding the recipients of your email just who you are and what you're bringing to the organization.
Interested in learning more? Don't miss Liz Sandwith's article, Ready to Conform. You can find it in the October issue of Internal Auditor magazine. In the article, Liz unpacks the crucial steps for internal audit functions to meet the new standards by January 2025. Packed with practical advice, it's a must-read for every CAE. Check the show notes for the link.
What other things for the CAE do they really need to be thinking about in Domain 4, preparing not just for their relationship with the board or audit committee, but also leading the function?
A really good question. And I am thrilled to see at Standard 9.2 in Domain 4 is the requirement for an internal audit strategy. There is some confusion. So I'm hearing people say, well, it asks for a strategy. It doesn't ask for a strategic plan in the standards. And I'm saying, well, hang on a minute. How do you deliver your strategy without a strategic plan? I think they're one and the same sort of thing. And then people are going, oh, yeah, get that. I think the importance of creating a strategy is that it avoids distraction. So often as an internal audit function, you put together your risk-based plan, you take it to your governing body for approval, your audit committee, everybody goes fine, and you start work. And then, somebody will say, oh, we have a project, can you do some assurance work on that? Or I'm concerned about this, the CEO might say, will you have a look at that? And we end up doing lots of bits of advisory work as well. And, without some strategic plan and strategy that says what it is we do, it's very easy to get distracted. So for me, the strategy and the strategic plan are the anchor in the ground that says, okay, I know where I am now. I know where I want to be. And I know how I'm going to get there. Don't distract me. Let me deliver my plan for this year, my risk-based plan, but let me also build my internal audit team, ensure they're competent, ensure that I'm developing the team so that they have the knowledge and the skills needed, be it data analytics, be it artificial intelligence, use of Chat GPT or Microsoft Copilot. do they have the skills to be able to use that and use it well to make sure the internal audit function is efficient and effective in terms of what we deliver?
Mm, sure. So that strategy then sounds like it needs to tie in with the organization's vision, the leadership and the strategy of the organization as well. If it's something they're focused on, then the internal audit strategy also needs to align with that.
I think if
Um,
it doesn't, I think we will end up with you know everybody going in different directions and pulling against each other. So
Mhm.
your starting point has got to be what your organization's strategic objectives are, and then how does what we as internal audit do align with those and help ensure. Remember, we're back to our purpose again. Help ensure that we can contribute to the delivery of your strategic goals and objectives, protecting the business, etc.
Mhm.
I also think that that there was a requirement for an internal audit strategy in the core principles in the IPPF 2017, but I don't think the majority of internal audit functions had an internal audit strategy and a strategic plan. Perhaps very large, more mature ones did. But again, I noticed today on social media, Anthony Palese talking about a new document that you've created about building and in creating an internal audit strategy. So again, the IIA is helping us in terms of delivering what we need to do to make sure that we are conforming with the standards.
Mhm.
The other thing I would say about domain 4, being a very simple girl, is for me, it is simply the job description of your chief audit exec. And what I've been doing is creating an appendix to job descriptions so that the CAE can evidence what they have done throughout the year to meet the requirements of Domain 4. And I think that would then be useful in terms of your performance appraisals with your CEO or your audit committee chair, so that you're looking to say, yeah, I did that really well. That wasn't so good. I struggled with that this year. Perhaps it's around technology. I haven't really been able to bring the team on to demonstrate that we're using tools like data analytics in every audit. There's been some challenges with people in that respect. So no, I haven't quite achieved that, but I have made a start on that. So for me, it's a supporting document to the job description of the CAE, this appendix. And, it's there to be reviewed by whoever the CEO and or the audit committee chair.
Mhm. And are there other documentation needed, or how are we, our internal auditors, thinking about the coordination and reliance standard? That's changed a little bit. Is that requiring more documentation or a different approach?
I think it's interesting that you use the word documentation. I have deliberately used the word evidence because I think sometimes when we say documentation, people think that's more bureaucratic. And I personally don't think the standards are more bureaucratic. What they are requiring you to do is to be able to evidence what you've done. We're internal auditors. Evidence is the very air we breathe. And therefore, I think if you think about it in terms of evidence to support, then it's everything we do. And I think that, 9.5, the coordination and reliance, is absolutely key because more and more I'm hearing CAEs tell me that it's difficult to recruit, they're carrying vacancies. So, why don't we think smarter and look at other areas in the business? Who else is providing assurance? And what is the level and rigor with which that assurance is being provided? And second line, if you're doing something around compliance and it links to an audit I'm doing, can we collaborate? And, maybe you can do the heavy lifting and I can do the more high level stuff, the conversations with senior management, etc. Is there opportunities? And we're calling it combined assurance or integrated assurance.
And what about the quality assurance and improvement program that also falls into domain 4? And specifically, there seems to be a new emphasis on performance objectives, performance planning. How has the QAIP changed? And just in general, internal audit functions reporting on itself and its planning for improvement?
I don't really think the QAIP has changed significantly. There is still the requirement for supervision, ongoing monitoring, continuous assessment. What I do think has changed is our outcome indicators. So, we talk a lot about performance indicators. Oh, we achieved 85% of our plan. 43% of my internal audit function hold the CIIA qualification, which is all great. And as a CAE, it's really helpful to have that information. But as a customer of internal audit, be you senior management or board or audit committee, what you want to know is how effective have we been? What have our internal audit engagements delivered? Have they identified inefficiencies? Have they streamlined processes? Have we strengthened risk management? Have we improved governance? Have we tightened internal control? Those are the outcome measures that I think the audit committee, and I am an audit committee chair, and they're certainly the outcome measures I look for from my internal audit function. They are the ones that tell us whether you're adding value to the organization or not. So I think the process, the QAIP concept hasn't changed, but I'm hoping that CAEs will look at both the quantitative and the qualitative measures and build up the qualitative ones moving forward.
Mm. And in terms of evidence of conformance or showing that we're conforming here, when I look at domain 5, I see there's talk about now findings, recommendations, agreed upon actions, and so forth. So what should internal auditors be doing individually to make sure that they're conforming? Have a lot of things changed in terms of the way that they do their services and the way that they document them, the way that they communicate about them?
I think that the answer to that is no. I think that a lot of what is in there is what and let me use the word in inverted commas, but what a professional internal audit function would have been doing anyway. I think what it touches on, without really saying it, is perhaps adopting a more agile mindset approach to your internal audit engagement. So don't wait until the closing meeting to start listing all of the things that you found that need addressing, your findings. Maybe we can talk daily with the manager, the operational manager in the responsible for the area, so that we can take them on the journey with us, so that there's that sense of internal audit engagement isn't something being done to them, but something they are collaborating with, participating with in terms of the approach. And it even goes as far as to say your opening meeting, we should be agreeing with the operational manager, the deliverables. What's going to come out of this audit? What was the purpose of us doing this audit? What are we planning on looking at? Where are we going to test? What are the areas that we are going to focus on? The risks, the scope, the objectives. And then what do we anticipate the value is going to be as a result of the engagement? Now, I think that's a real positive up front. I think it's a great way to start an internal audit engagement, bringing management on with us at the very beginning, rather than perhaps in the past, as we may have said, I'm internal audit, I'm here to do an audit, and get on with it without really sharing. It's, for me, we're almost back to that 3 lines model where it talks about internal audit collaborating, coordinating, aligning and communicating with both first and second line colleagues. I think that's the exciting bit. I think the caveat, and I know there are conversations around this on social media at the moment, might be the perception that our independence is being compromised by this. Now, I personally don't think it is, but I can see there is talk at the moment around social media about whether internal audit can still be deemed to be independent. I absolutely think so. Back to domain 3, positioning internal audit independently, standard 7.1, making sure that that's in place. And I think your independence can be protected.
Sure. Yes. I think that standard and that principle are still there. And in fact, maybe more appropriately where they should be aligning with governance. And so there's an emphasis there. What are the roles of the senior management and the board in helping to establish independence and protect it?
I think this is, again, it's a collaborative bit. I think sometimes, as internal auditors, we've talked about, we're independent and objective. And everyone goes, yeah, we get the objective bit. Independent, you work for the organization, you're paid, you're on the salary. How does that make you independent? But I think this new role of internal audit and this trio of audit committee or exec board, whoever the governing body, and senior management and internal audit working together just strengthens internal audit in the organization. It strengthens our independence. It means that management can see where we're coming from, what we're seeking to achieve. They can engage with that process. And we can actually go to senior management and say, do you know what? We've got a real problem in your area. We have a manager who's being less than cooperative, won't share information with us, and you know what our role and responsibility is. Can we have your help? Now, I think that's a positive way forward.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Are there any other tools that you're recommending or suggestions that you have for people to continue preparing to implement the new standards and be in conformance for January 2025?
I think that's challenging in terms of the clock is ticking. I think you need a training plan. So, if I was the CA, I'd look at my team, I'd look at the skills they've got, I'd be applying my foresight, my purpose statement, what's coming down the track, thinking about AI in particular, which everybody is talking about, and even quantum computing in terms of a tool for internal audit moving forward. How many of my people have those sorts of skills? So I think we need a training plan supported by performance appraisals, etc.
Well, thank you so much for your time and wisdom and insight. I think we've covered all of the Global Internal Audit Standards from front to back, and I hope that everyone is preparing and can use this information to help them. And I'll talk to you again in the future.
Thank you very much. And thank you for allowing me to share some thoughts.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe and rate us. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also catch other episodes on YouTube or at the IIA.org. That's THEIIA.org.